What's going on, everybody? This is another episode of Culture 316. I am one of your hosts, Jordan Nahisi.
And you got Mo at your throat. Go hi.
How's everybody doing? A lot has been happening this week and this weekend, almost too much. So we're not going to waste any time. But before we get into that, I did want to show love to everyone who's tuned in: Apple's podcast, Spotify podcast, YouTube, anywhere on social media. We all really, really appreciate it. And it's your support that keeps us going. So keep liking, sharing, subscribing, keep rating the podcast, and all that stuff. So first off, I wanted to start off on a lighter tone and with some more recent news, which is that Pat McAfee has been announced to be a part of ESPN's College Game Day full time. For those of you who are unaware, College Game Day is a program that ESPN offers that kind of serves as a pre-show to major college football games around the country. I just kind of wanted to know your impressions on it, how you feel about, because I know that you love Pat. Just wanted to kind of get your impressions on the whole move.
I just love him so much. He's like someone who you could definitely like book for so many roles. He has that personality. Like he clearly showed us that yes, he could be a performer, but he also is a really great commentator. He's definitely someone that you could put into that market, and he's just gonna make you look good. And he's someone that's like very like family friendly. Like you know what I mean? Like he's going to engage with the older folks and the younger kids. He just has like this fun and like infectious personality. I love Pat. I didn't watch ESPN, but you know what? I might just tune in for Pat.
I mean, rightfully so. I think that's the goat for everybody. And what really made me a fan was his bum ass Corbin analysis. I absolutely stand Pat. And that man is getting a couple bags at this point between being a talent at WWE, between the ESPN Game Day situation, plus he has his own podcast. So my bro Pat is out here getting to a bag. So much love to him. We just had to get that out the way because that's our boy. We had to show love. But moving on to the next topic at hand, Triple H has been named the chief content officer of WWE. With his new promotion, Triple H will oversee live events, talent relations, talent development, and creative services. And the promotion came after a 15% spike in the ratings, as well as double the amount of social media engagement since he was promoted to head of creative. So, good move, bad move. How do you feel about this move? You already know how I feel, but I wanted to get your
Yeah.
impressions on this new change.
Well, I kind of saw it coming,
Mm,
just because it's something that everyone's been wanting for a while, and I didn't really see Stephanie wanting to deal with this. Like,
yeah.
I figured they gave her the title because it was an easier transition considering everything that's happened with Vince. But like in terms of like someone who's actually was like the brains behind everything, I don't think she was making all these decisions by herself. You could
Mm,
totally tell that a lot of the moves we were seeing on TV and the bookings, like it was already like a Triple H product. It was just
yeah.
her name behind it, and it's just like, well, you might as well. Like we're not thanking her when we see this shit going on. We
Right.
thanking him.
That's a fact. That's
You
a full
know,
blown
so
fact.
it felt like it was natural, for the most part. I want to say he's been doing a great job. There's maybe one or two things I got my foot on his neck for. Signing Braun is one of them. Still mad about the Clash of the Castle match ending, post match
Drew.
ending. But other than that, he's been doing a great job. I'm super excited. I don't think anyone's more fit for this opportunity than Triple H, considering that he's someone who's been in the business, laced up a pair of boots. He's been part of so many things that happen in wrestling history. I mean, like, he was part of the WCW wars, you know what I mean?
Right.
All the way up until what he did now, currently. And then he's also been, associated with Stephanie, which means he's been closer to the McMahons, which means he's been picking up business mindsets and how you're supposed to book a show and, how this company was truly built from the inside out. So I just feel like he's like, there's no one more perfect for this role than him. And he's definitely fit with the times, which is what I love about him. He definitely adjusts to the environment instead of having like a boomer like complex to how wrestling should be. He definitely gets in with the times. He's very open to picking up talent from different promotions. He's always keeping his eyes out everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
he's young, compared to Vince McMahon. We have like this old, demented 70, 80-year-old fuck. You know what I mean? you know, like something was. Something was going out.
Right.
It was a frayed wire and going on in there. But we
Something
got
was
someone
missing.
younger, fresh. Yeah, someone that is just ready, and I just feel like is built for this. So I mean, congratulations to Triple H. I was elated. I mean, honestly, like I'm still happy about it.
Right. I I feel like this is one of those moves that just kind of needed to happen. I feel like it's interesting because the chief content officer wasn't a position that was known previously in WWE, at least until now. Like, I've never heard of a chief content officer. You've heard executive producer, head of creative, but you never heard chief content officer. But one, I think that the title itself puts him kind of in the same conversation and level as a Stephanie and a Nick Khan because they're both co-CEOs. And just from a title perspective, like WWE is such a big company and they do so much that I feel like head of creative may have not encapsulated correctly everything that Hunter was doing. So I'm glad that they kind of gave him that title. I'm glad that they gave him that promotion. And oh yeah, and that money. I hope that they he's been getting his bag. He's been ever since he's been back from his health scare. That man has been putting in all the work, and he deserves all the money. Um, I think that it's about damn time, and I think that this is a great move for him. I think that this is something that can also be a morale boost to the locker room because now you have an executive like Triple H who has developed so many good personal relationships with a lot of the talent, whether it's people he brought in from the Indies or people that he helped grow and mentor through NXT. Um, you know, has he made a couple decisions that I'm like, but like not everybody's gonna make all the right decisions, right? I think we need to give our mans a little bit of grace. But I think that this is well overdue, and I think that he 100% deserves it. I'm interested to kind of see who he employs kind of under his leadership because he reports to Tony Khan, but that means who's going to report to him. I feel like Shawn Michaels is going to be one of those people. I feel like Road Dogg is going to be another one of those people. But I'm just kind of really, really eager to see kind of where he kind of goes from here and who he employs. This is a sidebar question. Do you think that this promotion and this position, do you think that this contributes to a Triple H being the GOAT conversation?
Oh hell yeah, hell
Mm,
fucking yeah! Like I mean, you could sit here and hate on his cerebral assassin era, but like post cerebral assassin era Triple H, he definitely has made like such a big comeback and made so many contributions to wrestling in general. It's very hard to hate this man. You
very
know what I
true.
mean? There's not too many people that dislike Triple H for good reason, I should say.
Mm,
You know what I mean? He definitely has worked hard to rewrite his wrongs.
hmm
And like I said, I'm happy. I have like zero complaints. I feel like the company could only go up from here. Of course, he has a lot of a lot of work to clean up, a big mess to clean up, I should say. But it's getting done. It will get done. Kind of makes me wish that this decision was made a couple years ago when wrestling was falling flat for the past 3-ish years.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
but I'm happy. Like I'm so happy that this is going on.
I, I I agree with that for sure. I think that this contributes to the GOAT conversation. And even in his cerebral assassin era, even in his era of wrongs, he was still doing right. Like, bro gave us Randy Orton. Bro gave us Batista. Bro gave us a revitalized Ric Flair. Bro gave Shawn Michaels one of the best rivalries of Shawn Michaels' career. And considering how prestigious and illustrious his career has been, the fact that Shawn was one of Hunter's best rivals and Hunter kind of gave new life to him after he came back in '02, I think says a lot about Hunter and his work ethic and his ability to kind of elevate the things around him. So even in his era of wrongs, bro was still doing right. Um, but yeah, I think this definitely contributes to the GOAT conversation because when you think about the guys that are held in high revere and high esteem in our business, in this business, um, Austin, Rock, Terry, because I'm not calling him Hogan, Cena, um, like all these guys. Like I think Cena has had a, a run for 20 years. Hunter's had a run for nearly 30 in every phase of the business. When we're talking about from being, being somebody's sidekick to being in his prime, to building factions, to being an executive. He's literally covered all the bases of everything a pro wrestler wants to be. I think in this business, multiple time world champion, first ballot Hall of Famer, not one, not two, but three Hall of Fame worthy factions, Evolution DX, uh, what was it? Best for Business, whatever it was called, because he gave us Seth Rollins. But I think that this definitely puts Hunter in, I think, top two or top three greatest of all time, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah, he doesn't really get his flowers when you think about it. But
he
again, I
doesn't.
think it's because a lot of people are stuck on what he did when he was younger. That
Mm-hmm.
they're afraid to credit him. And yeah, he held the world heavyweight championship a lot, but it's weird because I feel like a lot of people still don't really mention him when they like think about that title or that whole era. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you hear people like Cena or you hear like Batista, even though Batista really wasn't there for that long.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting with the way people treat Triple H because it's rare for me as a fan when I ask someone, "Oh, who's your favorite wrestler?" Like it's rare that I ever hear Triple H. I probably know one whole person out of all the fans I know that says, "Yeah, Triple H is like my guy." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, we got one. We got two
That
now.
was me. That's me. Yeah.
That was
That's
me.
I'm one of
That's
them.
me. Yeah. I'm one
Damn,
of them.
that's crazy. It's insane. But I when I hear the arguments, it makes sense. But I don't think any other fan thinks about it.
Mm,
Like he really is like the workhorse of WWE, like he's like
absolutely.
the underdog. Even
Absolutely.
though like he's always been there and he's always been around. It just for some reason never like clicked in my head that like, yo, he literally is that guy. Like he's impressive.
Through and through and through. And we want to know y'all opinions on my guy Hunter. Is he the GOAT? Does this position and promotion make him the GOAT? How do you guys feel about this promotion and position? But we're gonna be moving the hell on. And speaking of the click, our guy Kevin Nash has partnered with Michigan-based company Hyman to produce his own strand of marijuana, Jackknife. Um, I wanted to know, he not a lot of information has been out yet, but wanted to know, why do you think Kevin kind of got into this venture in the first place? And what are your kind of first take impressions on him getting into recreational marijuana?
Well, first and foremost, I'm like not someone that frequently smokes marijuana, but from what I understand, it has a lot of benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew like he grew up in an era where a lot of wrestlers were injecting themselves, taking pills, excessively drinking and all that stuff. And because of all that stuff on top of what they do for their job, it definitely has caught up to them to the point where they are dropping life flies at an earlier age than what they should have been. And I know that's really hard and probably very traumatic for someone
Mm-hmm.
like Kevin Nash who keeps up with himself to watch all your friends and your colleagues that you grew up with to literally like succumb to habits from the past.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when you read about the cause of death, it's like straightforward things like a heart attack or like an overdose here or just it's something where it could have been prevented. So I do feel as though maybe, just maybe, he's going in this direction because he's trying to promote maybe something else that would help out um, wrestlers because they put a lot of stress on their bodies between what they do physically. They don't really rest. They're underneath a lot of pressure to be ready at all times. Like I completely understand why a lot of wrestlers turn to vices.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's trying to promote, as an old timer, a different vice for maybe since he couldn't save his current generation, maybe the generations that are coming after that, all right, maybe you could take this substance and you could still be healthy and you could still like give your all to the sport, because I feel like
Yeah.
maybe he is like concerned for you get what I'm getting at with
I know
this,
what you mean.
right?
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I but I agree. I agree. I think that this venture is kind of like not him righting anybody's wrong per se, but I think it's promoting an alternative method of healing. Like you said, wrestlers, especially guys in WWE, are on the road 300 days a year. They're constantly putting pressure on their body, constantly under stress. And it's very easy to turn to pills. You know what I mean? Very easy to turn to drinking and alcohol and, all this other stuff and being addicted to it when you're on the road that amount of time and you're kind of putting yourself under that amount of pressure. I think that when we talk about recreational marijuana and even medical marijuana, it's something that wrestlers can turn to that aren't going to have any detrimental long-term health, uh, you know, detriments, if you will. You know what I mean? I'd rather someone smoke a blunt than someone overdose on pills or someone just get hooked on pills. So, I mean, it's another way of kind of coping and dealing with, the stress that a lot of pro wrestlers deal with. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of like pro wrestling organizations have started to remove marijuana from their wellness program or from their drug testing program. Because I remember there was a time where in WWE where it was like you test positive for marijuana, like you're suspended for 60 days under their wellness program. But now I think that they've removed that. And I think that it's just because, we're in a new time and a new era where we understand that marijuana isn't necessarily a bad thing, at least compared to the other substances that are out there. And
It's not
I
really a
just think,
bad thing at all.
yeah, it's
Like,
not.
has
It's
anyone
not.
died from smoking weed? It's always like something plus
It's
they were
like
high
if it's
doing
laced
something
with
else,
something,
but
yeah,
no one
yeah,
ever
yeah.
died because of weed.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like usually something is laced with weed, but it's not really like, oh man, somebody died because they're smoking weed. You know what I mean? Maybe if they're smoking weed and they're like driving, because technically that is still, you know, driving while under the influence, but like that in and of itself, like weed in and of itself hasn't killed anybody. You know what I mean? So, but I definitely want to know everybody else's opinions on it because even though I don't smoke, I will be copping some of my guy's strand because he's my favorite, if not second favorite member of the clique, and probably second favorite member of the NWO because we don't like Hulk Hogan. But speaking of marijuana and cannabis, Sasha Banks was also on the cover of Cannabis and Tech today, and she was also talking about how essentially what we kind of previously discussed, right, with wrestlers putting their bodies under so much pressure. Um, and she was just talking about how she turned to CBD um, to kind of help her with her recovery and healing process. Now, for those of you who are unaware, there's two major chemicals in marijuana. There's THC and then there's CBD. THC is more of the chemical that you use when you want to get high, and CBD is more so for medicinal purposes. But she turned to CBD essentially to heal, to deal with depression and anxiety. She was talking about how she wasn't feeling like herself. And when she started taking CBD, all of that kind of went away. Um, wanted your impressions on that. And I wanted to ask you this. Um, do you see CBD being uh, professionally incorporated into treatment programs that the WWE and other pro wrestling organizations have to offer?
Well, to answer, I guess your first question, in response to Sasha, promoting and having like her own CBD thing going on. I was reading about it, and she was mentioning how in like 2018 she was experiencing anxiety and depression, and CBD actually helped her stop drinking,
Yeah.
which I thought that was a big thing because there's a lot of people in America that suffer from alcoholism, especially because it's that one thing where people always say that alcohol is bad for you. However, they make it accessible in like pretty much every corner, especially if you're from New York or whatever.
Yeah, that's a
So
fact.
I feel like yeah. So when I read that part, that's what really stuck out to me. Um, not just for athletes, but just in general, how it could be used again as a different vice rather than excessively drinking and throwing away your liver and your overall health and stuff like that. So good for her, by the way. Good for Miss Mercedes that she found something that was healthier. And your second question was,
Do you see like CBD and like CBD or CBD products being professionally kind of incorporated into like professional treatment programs that the WWE has to offer? Because they have their own like medical people and surgeons but like
oh yeah, yeah, because like people are already smoking in the back. You
yeah
know what I'm saying?
yeah
Like we know, didn't we get confirmation that the reason why Randy stuck around Matt Riddle longer was because he has like
his
his
favorite
favorite strand
strand.
of weed? You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, all right, boom, confirmation. Like people are already smoking in the back. I was honestly surprised that when weed was legalized and stuff like that, that they hadn't already tried to get on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, there's no negative or any downsides to cannabis. Like there really isn't any downside. It's really how you use it. And if they're using it in a way that's going to heal people and get them back in action sooner, then why not? You know what I mean? Wouldn't you want a happy, healthy, less anxiety filled roster that's ready to work and able? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like
Absolutely.
that's just the way I thought about it. So I'm very much surprised that they hadn't gotten on it before, but who knows? I mean, again, anything could happen, especially with us having Triple H and more power than before. So maybe he might even encourage it. I don't know if Triple H smokes. I heard rumors back then that Vince used to smoke. Don't see why it was ever an issue.
I have a feeling
But
that
since it's more accepted,
yeah.
hmm?
So I have a feeling that if Hunter was hanging around Sean and X Pac, he definitely took a blunt or two in his day. So
Right? That
yeah,
just makes sense.
absolutely. Um, I was gonna say, wait, you were trying to finish. I was gonna say finish what you were gonna say.
I'm done.
You're
Go
done.
on.
Cool, cool.
Yep.
Nah, I think to kind of go off of that, I think that they should definitely integrate CBD products into rehab programs if they haven't done so already. I don't want to assume that like they haven't done it, but I think that they should incorporate it. It's 2022. It's time. We understand not only that recreational marijuana doesn't have any downsides to it, but we know that medicinal marijuana has a lot of upsides to it. And I feel like part of the issue surrounding weed is the stigma and the stereotypes attached to it by way of the criminalization of it over the past 50 years. And I feel like we've all kind of grown out of that. We know that people who do weed come in all shapes, forms, and sizes, all different races. And that it doesn't really have any downsides to it. You know what I mean? Rather do weed than coke. And I'm gonna keep it at that before I say anything about people that that we've mentioned in our group chat. But moving on, speaking of cocaine, AEW had their all out
I
press.
love that segue.
Listen, it's relevant. But all right, so brief little summary slash kind of like summation. This past Sunday, AEW, literally as we were doing our live stream, which if you haven't checked it out, you should. It's available for replay. It's available wherever podcasts can be streamed. But AEW was having their all out press conference, their media scrum, which they do after every pay per view. But this one was a little bit more tangy than other ones in the past because CM Punk decided to use this platform to kind of air his grievances on rumors surrounding Colt Cabana, his behind the scenes issues with Hangman Adam Page, as well as the Young Bucks. Now, we were kind of talking about this before the show, but there's like a whole timeline. So, Mo, did you want to go through the timeline or did you want me to go through the timeline? Because it's a
I
lot.
guess we could kind of both. It's all over the place, and I'm still piecing it together
Right.
because, I mean, I'm pretty sure you all watched the clip, and I had to watch it several times because at first, when I first listened to it, I thought the interviewer provoked Punk to talk about Colt Cabana,
Mm-hmm.
but he just triggered himself. He just decided he's going to take this. 'Cause it was like a 25-minute rant, and this went off for at least 5 minutes on just Colt Cabana airing out his business and his financials. So I had to backtrack, and that that triggered him based off of the Young Bucks
Mm-hmm.
releasing some information to a press or whatever. What was it a certain source
I think it
that
was like
we
a
should
couple
mention?
sources. Yeah.
Yeah, so they basically put out this idea that Punk was responsible for blacklisting Colt Cabana, which otherwise made him look bad because he's supposed to be like their bigger babyface for the company. And now, like, you have these news sources going around saying that, you're a top babyface, this guy that you're investing all this money into that everyone wants to see. Yeah, he's an asshole who's stopping people's bags and shit,
Right.
you know? And that was how long ago? That was before the injury?
That was before the
Or
injury,
during
I
the
believe.
injury?
I think it was before or like right at the beginning of the injury.
And he's been out for how many weeks to be
I
exact?
I think it was to be honest, I don't know how long he was out. I'm thinking like between like it was like a couple months. Like I think it was like 2 to 3 months because he came to LA in June, and I think that that was like his last match. Like the following week he said that he had to like take like a break or whatever the case may be. So I think it's been like two I would say a little bit under 3
So
months.
8 to 12 weeks, you're harvesting all this bitter ass anger. Let's just start there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
then we have a promo with Adam Hangman Page, but this was before the injury, correct? That
Adam
he
Hank
cut this promo. Mhm.
I believe it was either before the no, it was before the injury
Yes,
because
before the injury.
because this promo was leading up towards their world title match, and Hangman was still the champion.
And he, yep. And then I don't think Punk was able to give his receipt back till afterwards. So he's been
Yeah.
harvesting all this energy for 8 to 12 weeks. That is insane. And like we discussed before, we recorded. Punk's not really active on social media. Like, he'll post something here or there, but he's not like vocal like the rest of the EVP. So he's literally just been harvesting this, and it was just such awkward timing because they just went on with a about 5 hour long pay-per-view with like 14 matches, and it ended with him positively ending with him
Right.
retaining his belt and his championship. And they go straight in and have this interview with the Scrums. What are they called again?
It's they call it Media Scrum, so it's the All Out Media Scrum.
Media Scrums. Okay, yeah, so they do their all out media scrums, and this man just takes about 25 minutes to just get on the elite's asses. Does I can't remember what was the question that the interviewer has asked, but it turned into, "Are you friends with Colt Cabana?" And then dragging Colt Cabana, talking about this man's financials, how his bank account's attached to his mother's, how he helped pay for all his fucking bills until he didn't want to pay for his bills anymore, and he didn't even want to answer this question or spill any tea until he got confirmation from the reporter that they're not friends, because that's how much he strongly dislikes this man. And this somehow also segue with him into him, whatchamacallit, it segue into him dragging Adam Hangman Page, which when I listened to the interview again, it almost didn't make any sense because it sounded like he was upset with him because he didn't want to take some of his veteran advice, which was kind of strange to me. Um, I don't have it word from word. I wish I had the script in front of me, but he was upset that he wasn't willing to take any of his veteran advice, and he was willing to make mistakes on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And that they cut a promo, and he said some things that he didn't like, and I rather than taking it up with him again, he waited to till they got to this media scrums, and it just threw me off because again, doesn't AEW have meetings before their shows? Don't they have like they gather up the crew?
Yeah.
Correct. So you mean to tell me everyone's been sitting in a room just hot and heavy, just and angry, and you want to wait till right after the show to take everything and then make it about you and take away everyone else's moment, make it about you? It was so strange and it was so bizarre. Feel free to chime in and cut me off because I'll just keep going about this
I was
one.
gonna say
And we're just breaking it
I
down. I
didn't
haven't got to eat his ass out.
I didn't want to cut you off, but um yeah, like that's I think that's pretty accurate as to kind of the build up towards it. As far as like all of this kind of building up. Now, apparently over the past couple of weeks they've also had like talent meetings, stuff like that, backstage meetings, not just with, you know, potential personal issues between the wrestlers, but between WWE tampering with contracts. So I'm pretty sure that they've had multiple meetings to kind of sit down and had the opportunity to hash things out. But that is what led to happen afterwards, which is essentially that CM Punk, Ace Steel, Kenny Omega, the Bucks, apparently Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cutler all had a physical altercation. Some people are saying that Ace Steel bit Kenny Omega, that CM Punk swang on Nick Jackson and knocked him out. But essentially,
They threw a
th-
chair at him and gave him a black
yeah,
eye.
yeah,
If I'm
yeah,
not
threw a
mistaken.
chair. Like somebody got a chair through with them, got the black eye. But essentially, things got physical after that. And I think the initial report was that the elite was the one, or the elite was the entity that initiated the physical confrontation, which I thought was very interesting because that is a very, very Brooklyn thing to do. That is, I was like, are y'all from Cali? Are you sure you're from California? But
Well, in their defense, didn't Punk say in that same rant that, you know, if you have a problem, take it up with me? And they said,
yeah,
I bet.
yeah, they bet. Say less.
Soon as that man finished his pastry, it was on.
Right. It was literally on. Like, so I can't really blame them for taking that approach, but things got physical. Now, because we've been keeping track of the situation for the past couple of days, um, reports have been coming out saying that apparently everybody who was involved in that altercation will not be available, or has been, I should say, has been suspended, and will not be appearing on Dynamite. I assume that means that they won't be on Rampage as well. And by the end of Wednesday, CM Punk and Ace Steel are either going to be suspended or out of the company, which, and this is, I believe, Sports Illustrated reported this. So I'm just like, ooh, this is heavy, but this is very, very interesting because I feel like there's so many layers to this issue. Um, I wanted you to start because I feel like you had a lot of things to sound off on, and I just feel
I
like
might
the
be all
people
over the place with this
talk
because,
to.
like, I'm mad at so many people, but I'm primarily mad at Punk.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with Tony Khan, so I gotta chew his ass out first
Go ahead.
because you sat there and watched him tear down your company for 25 minutes and expose your business
Mm,
for being disorganized, for being all over the place, and clearly you're a boss that does not barely a boss, but he's the man that basically signs the fucking paychecks and shit, but he does not know how to be a boss. He does not know how to control his fucking children. Your EVPs are supposed to be a representation of you. And the
yeah.
fact that it's to a point where we started off with just like the lower cards, like maybe like some beef with the females and some beef with the mid cards fighting and stuff like that. But now it has escalated to the point that the people that are main eventing, your top cards, your top draws or whatnot, the people that are again your fucking EVPs are lashing out on each other. And
Right.
again, Tony Khan just watched CM Punk just go off about it and did nothing. Like I watched his cokehead eyes just bug out his fucking head and he didn't do nothing about it. I was like, yo, it couldn't be. If it was, say what you want to say about Vince McMahon, all right. If you dislike him, I completely understand. I get it. But no one would ever have the thought to have pulled that shit with Vince McMahon sitting beside them.
That's a fact.
That's the part that got me. I was like, he's really gonna let this man just like implode their whole entire company after putting on a 5-hour long event that is competing with another company?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that's gonna make other people want to sign with your fucking company after
Right.
hearing all this fuckery going around? You should have unplugged the man's mic. You should have told him to go get up and go. You're done. You're done. But no, he was stuttering when he tried to cut off Punk, and then he gave up and he folded. And it's just that right there tells me enough about this company, because we were already talking about it for weeks. How and why we don't take Tony Khan seriously. Like, he does not come off like a boss. He comes off again like a mark with too much money that wants to buddy with certain wrestlers. And another thing, the politicking, because you could tell which people he picks and chooses to. How can I go about this? There's certain people in the company that I guess have so much access to Tony Khan and getting whatever they want out of him is almost to a point where it's not like you're my boss. It's more like, again, you're my homie, you're my friend. We're at the same level. And that's exactly what I got out of observing the body language between Punk and Tony Khan. Because for me, watching from where I was sitting, if I didn't even know who was who, I would think that Tony Khan was an assistant or an advocate or a very stressed out PR team going on, because he did not present himself like a boss. He let CM Punk say whatever he wanted to say and take it as far as he wanted to take it. So that was my first issue with Tony Khan right there. But bringing it back to Punk, I think he's fucking selfish. I think he's a fucking narcissist. I think that he's a shell of his former self, and he is literally representing everything he did not want to be. And it was all exposed in this interview. I don't know if he was intoxicated. I don't know if he was just stressed. I don't know if I can't understand or fathom how you could have such an amazing match with Mox and walk away with the belt, and you're filled with all this anger. Like, again, no one asked you this question. You were just getting it off your chest, and you decided while you're getting it off your chest, you're going to take down the whole entire company with you. To me, I thought that was a fucked up move, because, there might have been way too many matches on that goddamn card, but you definitely took away what should have been a highlight or a celebration for people like Keith Lee and Swerve. They put on one of their best fucking tag team matches that they did all year. The ladies definitely showed out to make up for Thunder Rosa being unable to defend her championship title. So, we should have been talking about Toni Storm. The biggest talk that should have been the whole entire motherfucking night should have been MJF's return. And I felt so bad for this man. I feel so fucking bad, because it's just like this whole buildup of everyone wondering what's happened to MJF. Is he gonna go to WWE? Is he gonna stay in AEW? What happens to MJF? You know what I mean? For him to come back in such an iconic way, bro, with the whole Joker mask or whatnot, and giving people the finger, and then just popping out the end with the voice note and all that stuff. Like, that should have been a moment. We should have been talking about this shit all week and wondering, oh my gosh, what's going to happen for Dynamite? What's going to happen for Dynamite? But no, for the last 48 hours, it's been nothing but being consumed with this EVP versus Punk drama and who's getting suspended and what, And it's not just CM Punk to blame, it's fucking Tony Khan. Because if he had more rules and regulations like we discussed last week, was it even last week? I don't know. We've been recording.
I think it was either last week or the week before.
We've been talking about this, how he literally needs to tighten up on his fucking kids and put down some ground rules, because if he had that to begin with, this shit wouldn't have happened.
Very true.
They know that they could run over him. He's a fucking doormat. He doesn't know how to be a fucking boss. I'm sorry I'm swearing, because this is supposed to go on YouTube. And I just thought about it.
Well, it looks like this video won't be made for kids, so I'll put that.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm swearing left and right. It's just that I'm angry for the talent. I'm angry for everyone else involved that's doing their job and doing everything right. And then you just have, again, someone who doesn't know how to lead a company, who enabled all these narcissists that we have in the room here. And then someone like Punk, where it's just like, you're a veteran. You want people to take advice from you? And look at the shit that you're pulling. Literally having a company that is working very hard. They definitely stuck their neck out for you, putting you in this position to carry a world title, strapping the rocket to you, and this is how you get back to them? Because you're mad about one article? Come on now, grow up. This is something we would expect out of the rookies. You've grown. He's in his fucking 40s. I'm sorry,
You're
y'all.
good. You're
I'm
good.
sorry. I gotta reel back on the swearing. I gotta reel back on the swearing. I'm gonna let you chime in because I'll go all podcasts on this man.
So here's the ironic part about this. I started off this season with a 10-minute pod called The Warm Up, and I said that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I think even though I was talking about Vince McMahon then, the same applies for Tony Khan now. What happens is I feel like what happens in today's corporate culture, we want our leaders to be transparent, empathetic, relatable. But what happens is that when you're around a lot of wrestlers who have been a victim to a certain power structure and a certain power dynamic, you have to be very, very careful because the last thing you want to do is serve as a doormat, as you said, as a pushover, as someone, that wrestlers just kind of see as the homie. Because truth be told, if I'm signing your checks, I'm not your boy. I'm your boss, dog. I'm your leader, dog. And I feel like a lot of grown men and grown women don't like hearing that because they don't like this idea of having to quote unquote follow orders or be under somebody's leadership. But the facts is the facts. Unless you're trying to start your own wrestling company and I'm signing your checks, dog, I'm your boss. I'm your CEO. Now, I'm not gonna sit up here and be a beefhead, and I'm not gonna be like a dictator, and I'm not going to be disrespectful and call you out your name. But there needs to be a respect for leadership. But then on the other end of the spectrum, as a leader, what are you doing to get that respect? You can't be sitting over here being buddy buddy with everybody for 3 years and then sit up at a media scrum and say that you're not going to take it anymore when you're talking about WWE tampering on your contract. It's like, are you really not taking it anymore because you've been so focused on everybody being everybody's friend for the past 3 years that you haven't demanded respect? And the fact that it's gotten to this point of you trying to like warn people about the whole tampering situation, it's already too late. So that's what I had to say about Tony Khan from that perspective. I feel like MJF said, there's people in the wrestling business who don't need to be in the wrestling business. He belongs in the crowd. He's a mark who has a lot of money. And I think that that's showing now because it seems like he never really has a stance on anything. He just stands next to who's ever hot or who's ever his favorite. So he's
He has a
willing to.
stance though. He does have a stand. I notice he picks and chooses when he wants to have some balls. That's
Mm,
another thing that annoys me about him because he'll find the most random interviews to like nip at, and it'll shock me that he'll actually nip back at somebody. But it's
hmm
just like, why don't you have that same energy for your own roster?
And here's another thing. You were so vocal about talking about Swole after her interview on a whole other podcast, and she was being respectful. But Punk literally destabilizing an entire company with one media scrum, and you're just like a deer in the headlights. Is just like you pick and choose. You're very, very loud about suspending Eddie Kingston, but you want to leak reports to Sports Illustrated. You're very, very loud about criticizing Swole, but you're quiet when you're talking about Punk. I want to know why. Because it seems like it's
And so
only
was the rest of the roster. Like that got me
right.
so irritated because all Swole did was politely articulate the reason why she departed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mainly because she just said lack of representation. Because she says that she wants her daughter to be able to look at the screen and see someone that looks like her. You know what I mean? A lot of ethnic kids, like people like me, wanted to see that growing up, and she was making a very valid point that there wasn't enough representation across the screen when it came to the women's division, and she
Right.
also felt like the women's division was being treated like a bit of a joke. She worded it a lot more politely than I am,
Yeah.
but she didn't drag Tony Khan. She didn't say nothing negative about Tony Khan. She didn't say he was a bad person or whatnot. He immediately ignored everything else that she said. That shit went up for like a couple hours, and his response was something petty and childish as "You weren't a very good wrestler, so that's why we released you."
And I and that and
And
I think
then on top of that,
and I think
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna
Sorry.
say, and I think that another problem that I've noticed, especially with Tony, is that it doesn't look like he's like secure in himself, like he's stable in himself. You know what I mean? Um, so and I could tell by just how he responds to things and his stance on certain things. because it just seems like, like I'm a nerd too, but like at the same time, he just seems like a nerd who just kind of wants to get one over on people. He feels like he can get one over on because he was, I don't know, like what he was going through when he was younger, but it just something about him screams insecurity. And I think that leaks through the way that he leads because he's so focused on being liked and he's not respected. And there's a difference between the two. You can be liked and not respected. There was even jokes about it in the beginning of the company when like Cody and them would be on BTE. Oh, we're just gonna spend Tony's money. But all jokes contain true shit. All jokes contain some true shit. So I feel like that
He's
wasn't.
spineless.
Yeah. So I,
He's very much spineless, and he started off this whole company with being like a people pleaser. So as soon as he got like the slightest bit of criticism, he's like, "I've been giving you guys what you want. Why are you guys upset with me?"
Right.
Like you would see, some chips and some flaking in his fragile ego. Like it's really sad. Like, and the reason why I also brought up Big Swole was because I noticed that the whole locker room, people that weren't even involved in this, she didn't drag nobody else. She didn't badmouth nobody in that interview. People were coming out the gates left and right, trying to endorse Tony Khan or whatever and saying like, "Oh, he's a great boss, you're just this and that. Tony Khan has treated me like gold and da 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 da." I noticed again, everyone's pretty quiet. Now I'm not sure if there's any legal reasons if maybe the whole locker room can't, considering that the police did get involved in the fight, that maybe no one could just comment on anything,
Right.
about their treatment in the company. But I just find it really, really strange how everyone had all this energy for Big Swole just, giving a honest analysis about her experience in the company as a woman of color. You know, everyone came out the woodworks for her and was attacking her, and people were like approving it. Like I saw podcasts and other analysis where people were condoning this type of behavior, but your fucking elites, the people who are supposed to be your main eventers, the people who are really pulling out your merch and supposed to be representing your company, they're running rampant and no one's saying anything and no one's commenting on how this could, this is all a reflection of Tony Khan as a boss. And
Yeah.
I had to put quotations because it really doesn't feel like it.
Now going from Tony to Punk, because I was able to touch a little bit on Tony, but I never touched on Punk. I think that Punk, it's so funny because when I thought about it, Punk and Triple H are really just the same person. One just has more tattoos than the other. Because I feel like what Punk was doing at that moment, if this was real, which I'm gonna confront at the end of my little spiel, and I'm gonna relay that to you. But I think that if Punk was for real and he was shooting the way that he was shooting, number one, this idea of like veterans telling young guys to take their advice is not something that's a new idea. Like that's something that a lot of old heads pride themselves on. Like you need to listen to me. Like I'm your big homie. I'm trying to help you out. Sting has said that in interviews. Flair, like anyone who's anyone, and I'm pretty sure that guys like Cena and Roman feel the same way. Like dog, I've been drawing money. I'm been doing this, that, and the third. I'm trying to help you out. I'm trying to put you on. And even down to like FTR hopped on the podcast and was talking about Punk because, there were reports about Punk coming out being like standoffish and like a diva, whatever the case may be. And he was just like, well, this man has been inviting people into his locker room and saying, yo, I want to critique your match. Like watching people's matches and giving them feedback on it and trying to help out some of the younger guys like Powerhouse Hobbs and stuff like that and guys like that. So I think that him taking offense to people not wanting to take his advice is a very, very classic veteran pro wrestler move. Do I think that it's the right thing? No. But I also think that I think a lot of his frustration was that. I think it was also the fact that when Hangman was cutting his promo, Hangman was alluding to the conflict that Punk had with Colt Cabana as well in his promo. And that was another thing that I think got him mad, that because he doesn't utilize social media, he was not able to confront on a consistent basis. And I think that he kind of used his media scrum as a platform to air out his grievances because he doesn't utilize social media, because he wasn't on TV as much over the past 2 to 3 months. You know, this was supposed to be summer of Punk too until that injury. And then that's kind of what led to John Moxley taking over. And I feel like if Punk was able to be present this entire summer, I think that we wouldn't have had as much tension because he would have been able to relegate and delegate accordingly and probably be able to solve in a timely manner, as opposed to like leaving, not being there for 2 months and then coming back. Now, what I will say about him going off on Hangman and the Bucks and Colt Cabana, personally, I would not have done it. However, I am empathetic towards the fact that like he was like, listen, I don't talk about stuff like this, but this has been like burning because people on the internet have been talking about Punk. Like I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how Punk is a bad person because of how he treated Colt Cabana. And it's like that stuff has been out there in the public for years on end. So I understand him wanting to air out his grievances then and there. However, there's a term called discernment. You don't have to say everything when you want to say it. You have to read the room. You know that MJF just had one of the most iconic returns. You know that that's a feud that's building. So why, and you know the value of your voice. You're one of the most coveted people in pro wrestling. Of course, when you say something and you go off on something, it's going to overshadow a lot of things that happen on a pretty eventful show. So if I'm in Punk's shoes, I'm a chill for now. Or I may just handle it backstage, or I may just talk to who I need to talk to get it solved. Because at the end of the day, if I'm for the young guys and I understand my value, I'm not going to put them in a position where their value goes down or what they do goes down in value. Because it wasn't just in, like you said, it wasn't just the MJF return. It was the building of that whole faction around him. It was Tony winning the title. It was Keith and Swerve winning their titles. Um, so like I think there was multiple things at stake that he should have considered before he went off like that. With that being said, I think this is a work. I think this is a work. And at first I was like, why would this be a work? And if you allow me some of your time, I just want to tell you why I think this is a work. So, what show is happening in 2 weeks from today? Dynamite Grand, Dynamite Grand Slam, which
Oh,
happens in
Grand Slam! I forgot about that shit.
which happens which happens in New York City. It's probably going to be their biggest arena show of the year. At least that's on television when you exclude all the other pay-per-views. New York is the number one media market in the world. You go to New York, you know that it's going to be an eventful show. You want to create the scene for a big show. So, all right, I'll let CM Punk go off and air out his grievances. Or maybe they were just backstage and they kind of figured this out altogether. In my opinion, I think that the Young Bucks, as well as CM Punk, are very much aware of today's wrestling climate with social media and the internet and reports, and they know what gets indie marks going, and they know how to trigger people. And they were also able to run a litmus test with MJF. We swore MJF was going to WWE until we saw him back at All Out. And the way that he came back shows me, extension or not, contract or not, this was something that had to be talked about. For MJF to come back to All Out in Chicago after Punk wins the title at All Out, this is something that's a very, very meticulous plan. But mind you, leading up into that, oh, reports are saying that MJF is in talks with WWE. Reports are saying that MJF is this, that, and the third. Everybody, or at least a good amount of people, weren't even expecting an MJF return because of what the reports were saying, because of what sources were saying. They were able to kind of see that and assess that in real time and be able to say, okay, well, we see that this works. We can apply this method to other things. Also, when we just look at that weekend of wrestling, if we're being honest, All Out was not the most talked about event of the weekend. And so I feel like this is a good way to generate buzz because, like you said, it was a 5 hour pay per view and people were tuned out and not necessarily engaged uh, towards the end of the pay per view because it was so long. How do you keep people engaged? You create a moment. You create a moment.
Wait, so are you implying that that fight never happened?
I'm implying that this whole thing is, yeah, I think this is a whole work. I think this is
Because
a
they were
whole.
very descriptive about who was in that fight, what happened in the fight, who broke it up, Jericho getting involved and speaking to Tony Khan before he was left alone with them to handle it whatever way he was going to handle it. Like
Mm-hmm.
that that would be really fucked up to the fans, to be honest.
But at this,
Like you traumatized us, Tony Khan.
right,
If that's the case.
but this is the reason why this makes it so interesting. If this, if this, um, particular incident was by default, it means that Tony Khan is currently perhaps the worst leader in wrestling. If this was by design, this means that he's one of the best creative minds. But either way, you're still talking about it. Like, and I think that that's one of the things that makes it such a polarizing case. Like, yes, it's traumatizing, but it's like when we're talking about real storylines and we're talking about real narratives in wrestling, you have to adjust to the times. You have to adjust to wait to. I'm trying to phrase my words correctly. You have to to adjust to what feels real and what feels relevant and what feels intriguing. We've like even with the whole we've been seeing it on Raw when we see when when Dexter Loomis first started popping up, when like he was like coming through the crowd and like that camera angle and stuff like that. And now we're seeing it manifest in a new way. But I feel like if wrestling wants to evolve, they have to evolve with the things that feel real. And I feel like, an indie report, a suspension, this is what feels real. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a work. And I could be wrong. I'm just saying I just feel like it's a
But if
work.
it's not, what happens if it's not? Like, how do we move forward? Like, we literally, like, from what the other reports they were saying that um everyone that was involved in that whole entire fight, um several of them got suspended and some of them were removed. We don't know which names were removed quite yet, but it's just like, what do you do moving forward? Like, we just crowned a champion last pay-per-view and
Mm-hmm.
whoop, we like that belt's vacated, and we're also wondering what happens with MJF. Like,
Right.
how are we going to re-spark him coming back, considering that all the attention has been pulled away because
From
of this
him.
incident? Does he come back and cut a pipe bomb on what just happened? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you work with this and even make it into like an angle that doesn't make the company look embarrassing? Because a
Well,
lot of
here,
people allegedly aren't showing up tomorrow. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, tonight.
right. I would say that that's not for us as fans to figure out. I think that's for the executives at AEW to to figure out, because I feel like this is ultimately going to be the test of Tony Khan's leadership. This whole past 3 years, we want to change the world of pro wrestling, forbidden door this, diversity that. That it's cute to be diverse when you have a black woman as your CBO. You don't have that anymore. It's cute to have the forbidden door. Listen, you don't have
Oh, that was
Brandy
petty.
is out of there. Brandy had her baby that cured racism, and she got up out of there. You don't have Brandy as your CBO anymore. Forbidden Door is cute when you have all of New Japan's most valuable former assets, and now they're in a position where they kind of have to do a show of you to regenerate interest in that company. All this Forbidden Door stuff is cute when business is best for you. All this diversity stuff is cute when business is best for you. But when you have to go between arguably your favorite wrestler and the wrestlers that made your company attractive to attract your favorite wrestler to come back in the first place, who do you side with? Because ultimately, a decision has to be made, which means that a stance has to be taken. So you have to decide: do you want a healthy work environment by keeping Kenny, the Bucks, and who may have you, or do you just want to be the guy known for bringing CM Punk back and just keep him happy? Because I'm telling you this: if this is real, one of them got to go.
CM Punk
Somebody
gotta
got to go.
go.
Somebody
It's
got to
not a
go.
loss if he goes. It's not a loss if he goes. Like I'm not. I don't mean to be a dickhead. It's just that he was excited in the beginning, but it's just like he's kind of old. He's kind of worn out. He keeps
It's
getting
the honeymoon
injured.
period has worn off, and I think that that's something that
And
he
I have
kind of
another
alluded to that would
question.
happen. Yeah,
No, I had a question because it's just like, what hypothetically, if he gets fired, do you think another company is going to work with him? Do you think that even Hunter would bother calling him? Do you think
yeah,
they would try to repair their relationship?
yeah, absolutely,
Really?
absolutely. Yeah,
Considering
yeah.
everything that's been said and done.
Considering every dog, Scott Steiner was slandering Stephanie McMahon for the better part of 20 years. That man still ended up in the Hall of Fame, and his son is the NXT champion. Like, what are we doing?
Fair response.
Like, I think that, and let's not act like we got a guy who's considered one of the top heels in the business in the Miz, who was a quote unquote locker room cancer at one point. That's the reason why he had to change outside the locker room at one point. But people change and people grow, and people will always have that capacity to change and grow. And I don't think that you should base CM Punk's value off of an incident, real or fake, uh, with a certain set of people, especially if there's a whole other different set of people that have been singing his praises with FTR and talking about how he's tried to help a lot of the young guys. I think Punk has a lot of value. And I think that Hunter, more than Vince, probably has a little bit more of an advantage of acquiring Punk to come back to WWE. So I could see Hunter making that call and being like, "So what's up?"
Imagine him lining
But I was gonna
Woodhunter
say,
on TV. Holy fuck, that'd be
huh?
insane. If they took
Hunter
him
and Punk
back
on
and
TV,
had him
right?
align that what's like that would be insane if they were aligned together like on TV, but they're kind of semi shooting their promos,
Yeah,
like at that point, yeah, we do got a war. We really do got a war if they were to
real
get CM
like a
Punk
real
back.
life.
But
I was gonna say,
yeah,
would you think that WWE would take Punk back? And I have one more question for you before we wrap up.
um, honestly, I feel like they're willing to go to whatever links would get them money. And even though fans would call CM Punk a sellout, I still feel like if he came back, now they're definitely watching because they
Mm-hmm.
want to know what's going to come out of his mouth. And they're probably assuming that if he did get signed, that there's probably somewhere in the agreement where it's like, I say whatever the fuck I want to say during my promos, especially because we're TV 14 right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stop me. You can't cut my mic. So I definitely would still watch, even though
Mm-hmm.
like if that situation is in what he did in the sequence of events did actually occur, maybe that did change my opinion of Punk, but I'm not gonna lie, it would make amazing television. I don't put it past Hunter to do what it takes to put on like a good show and get some ratings.
Right.
So that's my take. But what was your last question?
Now, my last question is this: you're Tony Khan. You have to make a decision. Are you keeping Punk or the Bucks, or I should say, Punk or the Elite?
I keep the elite. I feel like they have given more to the company than Punk has. It's not even I dislike CM Punk as a person. I just feel like if he would have came back sooner into the business when he was closer to his prime, we could have got a lot more out of
Mm-hmm.
him. But
Yeah.
I feel like the demeanor I got from watching that interview, and he was talking about how he's old, he's tired, he's this and that. And again, you saw those promo comparisons that was put up on Twitter and all over social media when they're talking about his energy from a year ago versus now. It kind of just sounds like, he had his run and he's kind of exhausted. You know what I mean? So it's like, do you get longevity if you kept him around? If this is how he's acting after a year, and insinuating that yes, like this was true and everything that was alleged actually happened. I feel like we've been getting a lot more out of the elite, and I feel like for the most part, the elite has been problematic. Do I think that they're fit for their roles? No, they're not. But in terms of what they've been doing as talents on TV, I feel like they've been showing out and they've been doing their job, and no one else really has been complaining about them. So I would remove the bad seed.
Yeah.
That's just me.
I I agree with that. I think that the elite are definitely the faction that you want to keep. Punk, I feel like has a lot of value. I think he's a great wrestler. I think that his run over the past year has been very much a nostalgia act, which is the reason why I have a feeling that this is a work, because this is something to keep his interest beyond the honeymoon period that he's been experiencing. But if this is real, I think that I would just keep the elite. The elite have you can't have all elite wrestling without the elite. I feel like Cody having a legitimate departure to WWE was already enough of a red flag, and you don't want to lose the whole gang, because you know that if Cody is out of there and the Bucks and Kenny leave, Hunter is following up with the best looking contract that he can put together and the best looking package that he could put together. And I don't want that. I feel like I would get more out of Kenny Omega, who, by the way, is creating the AEW video game. Um,
Oh, that's a fact. I keep forgetting that they're having that come out. Like that's a,
yeah,
what
the
do you, what
fight,
would you do?
fight.
Isn't him and Adam Cole also? Yeah, they're both
I
working
think
on
they're. I
that,
think
or
they're.
they
Well,
both had
they have.
involvement in that.
They have like a whole crew of like people kind of like putting and piecing that together. But
Oh, then what do you do? Did you have to scrap the whole game?
yeah, exactly. And we're not trying to do that because they just already spent a bunch of money on it. So I would keep Kenny in the elite. I would keep the Kenny in the elite. I feel like there's more matchups available for them and more opportunity for them. And I feel like they're what makes the company more attractive to other wrestlers to come over. Also, not to mention that Malachi Black is taking a leave of absence. We don't know if that's tied to his role in AEW or his mental health. Apparently, it's because of his mental health. Sending love and light his way. I hope you get better and recover and know that you're not alone if you're even watching this. Um, but yeah, I feel like you retain the elite. I think that should be the priority over everything. Also, I want to leave the show on this cliffhanger because your facial reactions be funny as hell. What if this was all a scheme for us to not even be thinking about the undisputed elite? Because who's talking about Adam Cole right now? And we're going to end on that note. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Culture 316. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.